two.
Hey, Lynz, what are you listening to?
Brian, you share yours and I'll share mine.
With millions of podcasts, how do you choose?
We are here to help you find that next bingeable podcast.
Or that piece of content you'll follow regularly.
You're listening to Feed Drops.
All right. Welcome back to another episode of Feed Drops. My name is Brian Colbert from Sitch Radio, and this is Lynz Florin from Growth Network Podcasts.
Thank you so much, Brian. I am coming to you today from Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm usually based in Los Angeles, but I'm in Tulsa right now, visiting my dad and working on a new podcast project.
And I mean, I don't know how much you're willing to share. He shared quite a bit of it with me, and I'm like jealous. Cool project, bro.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool project. My stepmom was a singer. She started back in the 60s with a all-girl band called the Candy Canes. I learned recently that she started in the band when she was 14, and they had to sign over her guardian rights to the manager so that she could go on tour with them. So we're starting all the way back there. I've met some of the other members of this band called the Candy Canes, and been following her career. And now I'm digitizing a bunch of cassettes that she kept from her career, and going to turn it all into a podcast called Rediscovering Debbie Campbell. There's a trailer out now, and we should link to it.
Yeah, we'll definitely throw a link to that in the show notes. I'm super pumped, man. What a cool personal passion project that you're rocking. So
it feels like the project of a lifetime. So I feel very lucky. And another thing I feel very lucky to have this week is this is our first episode where we are exclusively using submitted shows. So we have a submission process through our website, feeddrops.com. And every week, Brian takes all of the things that were submitted and we look at them and we try to listen through and pick some. We've been getting a lot. It's been really great, but we were able to pull one a piece. And so what was it like for you, Brian, pulling off a list?
You know, it was interesting. I need to think about the audience we're trying to build for Feed Drops and not necessarily what speaks to me, because that's actually much more limited than probably the average podcast, listener. I kind of confine myself to a couple of categories of how I like to spend my time consuming content, but there were some cool shows that I might not listen to. I'm going to go back and re-listen and go, okay, there's gold here. I need to quit being biased about what I like and share some of these great pieces of work with you. Lynz, what did you think?
Well, it's like a fine line between the feeling of, oh, hey, I have learned what I appreciate out of life and I seek more of that, which I think is sort of the benefit of growing older and learning. But then there's also that your field of vision gets smaller and you need to be reminded that there are things outside of your field of vision that are also good. And I think that's what this is for me. And it's just fun to immerse myself in someone else's world for 20 minutes or an hour, however long it is. And, we definitely got to immerse ourselves in some other people's worlds this week.
And the way Lynz and I are working this, I don't take first pick of the list. I don't listen to anything. I download the report. I put it in a shared file. And then when I have time, I go back to it and we start listening. And you had the first choice. And the funny thing is, I probably would have picked that as well. So, it's first come, first serve. And Lynz got to the list that I generated. I ran the report for it and put it out there. But, hey, first come, first win,
Absolutely. And so the show I picked had they review movies they review movie soundtracks. The reason I picked it this time was because they're talking about the Pulp Fiction soundtrack, which is one of my favorites from when I was growing up. So I felt like I could definitely had an opinion about what they were talking about, and that made it easier to pick. And that show is called Soundtrack Your Life. And what show did you pick?
I picked The Paranoid Style. And fortunately, they submitted an episode that spoke to me because I'm somewhat of a history buff, number one. Number two, as I listened to more and more of the show, just the way these two young ladies are working with each other, bouncing off of each other, just was phenomenal. I think they do a really good job hosting this show together. And again, that's The Paranoid Style. And they get into conspiracy theories and things of that nature. So I was pretty pleased.
Yeah, no, it was really fun to listen to them, and they definitely brought you along on the journey with them, I think, and that was a fun part of that show. So I'm really excited to dig in a bit further into these shows that are both a little bit more, pop culture than either of us are normally in, and it's an exciting place to be.
And we're going to do that right after this break. All right. Thank you for supporting those that support us. And number one. And number two, we are going to jump into The Paranoid Style. Here's clip number one.
George was once again telling the truth. That crispy white synthetic hard front we know and love from numerous paintings and currency was in fact his own hair. It was a military style called a queue that was the 18th century version of a buzz cut. Washington's hair was pulled back into a ponytail, the sides were puffed out and curled, and then the whole thing was powdered white. Pomade was most likely used to hold the curls and powder in place, but the Mount Vernon Museum has in its collection a small silk pouch that Washington used to tie over his ponytail while dancing to avoid sprinkling white powder on his jacket. Washington's actual hair was a light reddish brown, according to biographers.
Man, that little ponytail baggie is super classy. Pardon me whilst I tie this little bag around.
And how much dancing was this guy doing?
Apparently enough to warrant a ponytail bag.
We've all seen colonial pictures with the white wigs, and I had no idea that they were powdered white. I had no idea they needed a bag so they wouldn't lose the powder while they, got their groove thing on. That was kind of funny to me.
It's and let's just talk about this. The man bun is not new, right? So this happened a long time ago. This is a style that's just coming back. I just thought it was great, the detail that these ladies brought forth. I mean, they did their research. They had, anecdotes and details, and there was like the red portion, and then they kicked into the dialogue where they're being hilarious, and so that was a fun. It was a fun.
Yeah, I enjoyed that clip as well. Let's hit clip 2.
Sister, did you think I'd really pick a topic that didn't have some cuckoo pants conspiracy theory related material for you? I cannot tell a lie.
I thought you did.
George Washington, founding father of the United States, was a Freemason.
Yes.
As we mentioned previously in our Denver airport episode, Freemasonry or Masonry is the oldest and largest fraternal organization
Sausage Fest
in the world.
Allegedly.
It dates back to the stonemason guilds of the 13th century. Freemasons are located worldwide, organized into lodges, and members work to attain knowledge to progress through 3 rank levels: apprentice, journeyman, and master mason.
That spoke to me because the first podcast I ever recorded was 2008 for a Masonic lodge. And so I'm like, okay. I mean, they hit me with the history. I love American history. And then they hit us with the conspiracy theories about the Masonic organization. But that's why I dug that clip. You, Lynz?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, I really liked it. And they again, this is really engaging. They've put an extra effort in, that like Sausage Fest, allegedly. That bit was clearly, it was really well timed. They clearly did put thought into it. And just so as a creator, game recognized game. That was fun.
Yeah, and then the voices and then playing characters, that just adds that much more to it for me.
Yeah. So I think anyone who enjoys conspiracy theories or debunking them, I think either side of the conspiracy theory pro con list, I think this is a show that you might enjoy.
And they actually did a presidential series. So I'm going to go back and at least hit the presidential ones, if not more of what they're doing. So I enjoyed it. That is the Paranoid style. And we're going to dive into Soundtrack Your Life right after this.
All right. Welcome back to Feed Drops. We are talking about Soundtrack Your Life. And Soundtrack Your Life is, a show where they talk about movie soundtracks. And I think, they don't play movie soundtracks on them. They're discussing the soundtrack at length. And I think we'll let their voices start to talk here.
Do we like Pulp Fiction? To your point, is Pulp Fiction a favorite?
Who doesn't? I first saw this movie. I was in high school when this movie dropped. So yes, I'm old. But I remember walking out of the theater going, what the F did I just watch? And it was confusing. And now if I'm flipping through channels and I see Pulp Fiction, I can't not watch. I have to finish it from whatever point we're in. That's what's on TV.
Well, and if you go back to a time pre-IMDb and pre-Google, if you walked out of a theater feeling confused, you just stayed confused. There was not a way to unconfuse yourself except talking about it with people,
right?
Or going to watch it again, And so I think Pulp Fiction, Quentin Tarantino really made his name very, very big with that one. And, I was in middle school when it came out. And the soundtrack, everybody had it. I think, when it got to high school time, no matter what kind of music you liked, your CD book had Pulp Fiction in it, because there was something for everybody.
And for those of you who don't know what a CD book is, it was literally a big binder with clear sleeves you could put your CDs in, because that's how you carried your music around.
And they were giant because what's the use of having just a couple of CDs with you if, as we know with these devices that can play everything on them all the time, the ability to access a lot of music is good. So we had these 244 disc giant thing. There were suitcases of CDs, but Pulp Fiction was definitely a great one. It exposed me to music that I wouldn't have found otherwise. And that was one of my favorite parts of it.
And, I don't want to spoil it, but one of these next clips, we have two more for you, opened my eyes up to, let's just play a clip.
I think another thing Tarantino is so masterful at is making music feel ambient. It's something that they're listening to on the radio or that they're, feeling in that moment. And I don't know, there's a very kind of warm and organic quality to how he puts music in his films, which is always nice. It's never just there. It's always incredibly essential.
Now, Lynz, you're more of a musician than I. So what do you think about what was just said?
I think I agree. I think Quentin Tarantino, the songs are picked before the movie is edited. He knows the music he wants to evoke a scene. It's not an afterthought. It's been planned along with the shot list. And that kind of intention is just so evident. And he's trying to create juxtaposition moments, right? Where there's some terrible things happening, but it's a light song, or vice versa. That's something light happening, but it's a heavy song, maybe foreboding. And he just really hit the cultural touchstone with all that on this one.
He really did. And I'm going to chime in after the last clip.
But I think this record in particular has the most energy and the most, and I would never admit, I known some people who've used drugs. And so I can only imagine that this was what it would be like in some ways, when you listen to this record.
Right. It's like, tell me your movie is about hitmen and drug users without telling me your movie is about hitmen and drug users. The soundtrack really does speak to that content, right?
And so what Lynz was saying, the choice of song, given what we're visually seeing, it really made me think after I listened to this all the way back then of how that invoked emotion in me while I'm watching this movie in a theater in the late 80s. It's mind-blowing, and what a masterful job at that. And I intentionally haven't watched it again yet. I want to before this episode airs. I didn't want to watch it before we recorded it because I really wanted to speak to what this podcast episode that we just heard clips from made me feel.
Yeah, I can't wait to follow up once you get to watch it again and get to sort of pick out the moments and see what how it maybe increased the enjoyment or made you pay attention to something new.
Yeah, I mean, we all know the big drama songs when they're, that's one thing, but this is such subtle choices, in my opinion, that I don't know, man. Master.
Yeah. Well, and he paired it with visuals, it was a meme. He was like making memes from scratch, in the moment. And I think maybe we both have to go back and watch it and come back and talk about what it feels like to look at it again.
Yeah. And back then memes were called posters. They hung on a wall, but story for another day. Hey, everybody, we've switched things up a little bit. This show is Feed Drops. And what we do, Lynz and I dissect and listen to a lot of shows and pick clips that we like to help celebrate other podcast creators. Now, what we did was we started a second RSS feed, just the drops. Those are the episodes in their entirety. So they're going to live over there. This RSS feed is just going to be Lynz and I talking about and celebrating these other creators.
Yeah, we think that this is a chance to, you likely know whether you want the full episode drop situation or whether you want our hilarious selves talking about them. But you get to choose which one you're subscribed to. When they come into your feed, you kind of can very quickly suss out what it is for you. But we'd love feedback. This is a chance we're exploring. We think this is the way that it'll work. But the best way for us to know is comment on our social media, DM us there if you want to, reach out to us on the feeddrops.com website is also a great place to contact and to submit your show.
And if you aren't a podcast creator, but you have a favorite podcast you would like to submit, please do. But in the comment, please put, I nominate this show and why, because we do reach out to every single podcast when we're going to include them on this show and have a conversation with them before we bring them onto the show, just to make sure they were the ones that submitted the feed and, they're cool with what we're doing. So it's just not us grabbing what we like, but podcasters, submit your show. If you're just a podcast consumer and really love a show, nominate it.
Yeah, we think this is going to be a great way for us to find new things, and we think it'll be a great way for you to find new things too, and for you to express your fandom and support of a show that you really love. So,
most definitely. Well, Lynz, I've had fun. Enjoy the rest of Oklahoma. You enjoy the rest of Oklahoma. Sorry to interrupt you there. I cannot wait till you come back and we're sitting across the table from each other, breaking bread, and me learning about this emotional journey you're on right now, because I'm sure it is.
Yeah, it's been a trip, and can't wait to share a little bit more about it next week. And you've got 2 more week and a half there? I'm flying back next week, so we should be able to meet in person, but maybe it'll be virtual. Going to leave a little bit of surprise in it.
Very, very cool. So if you're listening to this, on your favorite podcast player, you can get it ad-free and a week early over on Substack. Hit Substack and search Feed Drops. You'll find us. There's also a link in the show notes below if you would like to join us over there, ad-free and early access. Plus, we've got video over there.
Yeah, if you want to watch us make faces at each other and do all of our fancy hand signals, there's maybe some coordinated dancing. You don't know, right? The only way to find out is through the Substack.
Never know. And wait, eventually I will spill my coffee on me while I'm trying to talk, because talking and drinking shouldn't be done together.
No, but we are the kind of reckless guys who are going to try it anyway.
We will see you next week.